Emily Carter, a 13-year-old with a talent for crafting, spends her days at a roadside stand, fighting to turn her handmade bracelets into enough income to feed her family and pay overdue rent. Life is a relentless cycle of hardship for Emily until a chance encounter changes everything. Nicole Bennett, a successful but emotionally detached businesswoman, finds herself stranded by car trouble near Emily's stand. What begins as an ordinary request for help soon sets off a chain of events that will challenge both of them in ways they never imagined. As Nicole offers Emily a small favor, she becomes drawn into the young girl's world of resilience and quiet strength. Inspired, Nicole decides to help Emily on a much larger scale, but neither woman realizes the challenges they'll face. From growing tensions within a struggling community to the pressure of leading a movement, both Emily and Nicole must confront their own fears and insecurities. Can they bridge the gap between their vastly different lives to build something that truly matters? And how will their choices ripple through the lives of others around them? The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, its golden light spilling across the patchwork fields that lined the old country highway. Emily Carter sat on a rickety stool behind her makeshift stand, carefully arranging the small trinkets and crafts she had spent the last week creating. Her fingers, roughened from hours of weaving and gluing, worked with practiced efficiency as she tried to make her wares look as appealing as possible. The stand itself was little more than a folding table draped in a faded tablecloth, its edges fraying from years of use. The crafts were simple yet intricate. Braided keychains, hand-painted ornaments, and bracelets made from colorful scraps of fabric and beads. Each one represented hours of meticulous effort, and each one carried the weight of her family's hopes. Her mother, Lisa, worked long shifts cleaning offices in the city, while her younger siblings, Molly and Sam, relied on Emily to help make ends meet. This stand was their lifeline. Cars whizzed past, their drivers barely glancing at the roadside display. Emily was used to the indifference. Most days, she sat in the stifling heat or the biting cold, hoping for the occasional kind soul who might stop and purchase a small item. Today, however, seemed especially slow. Her stomach grumbled, a sharp reminder that she had skipped lunch to save the last of their bread and peanut butter for her siblings. Emily looked up and down the road, squinting against the glare of the setting sun. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, bordered by overgrown grass and scattered wildflowers. Her home, a small, dilapidated trailer, sat just out of sight in a nearby patch of woods. The rent was overdue, and the landlord's last warning had been clear: no payment, no shelter. She sighed and adjusted the sign propped against the table. Hand-painted in bright colors, it read, "Handmade crafts. Support local talent." The cheerful lettering felt at odds with the quiet despair tugging at her chest. "Please, just one sale," she whispered to herself. "Just enough to get us through today." A few miles down the same road, Nicole Bennett gripped the steering wheel of her sleek, black sedan with white-knuckled frustration. The car was supposed to be brand new, her reward for closing a major deal at the firm, but today it seemed determined to betray her. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree, and a faint but persistent hissing sound came from somewhere under the hood. Nicole was running late, as usual. Her schedule, packed with back-to-back meetings and high-stakes phone calls, left little room for detours. She was on her way back to the city after an exhausting weekend meeting a demanding client. All she wanted was to get home, sink into her plush leather couch, and drink a glass of overpriced wine in peace. The car shuddered suddenly, jerking her forward as the engine sputtered and died. With a groan, she coasted to the side of the road and threw it into park. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered, slamming her hands against the wheel. Her phone had barely one bar of signal, and she knew calling roadside assistance would be a gamble. She leaned back, exasperated, and scanned the road ahead. That was when she noticed the small stand just up the way, a splash of color against the dull green of the overgrown grass. A young girl sat behind it, her posture straight but her shoulders visibly tense. Nicole sighed, grabbing her purse. "Maybe she has a phone," she mumbled, stepping out of the car. Her designer heels crunched against the gravel as she made her way toward the stand. Emily noticed the woman approaching and immediately felt a surge of apprehension. The woman was tall, impeccably dressed, and radiated the kind of confidence Emily associated with people who never worried about money. She looked out of place here, her polished appearance clashing with the rustic surroundings. "Hello," the woman said briskly, her tone clipped. "Do you happen to have a phone I can borrow? Mine has no signal." Emily hesitated. Their phone at home was an old flip model, and the battery barely lasted through the day. Still, she nodded and pulled it from her pocket. "It's not much, but you can try," she said quietly, handing it over. Nicole accepted the phone with a small nod, punching in the number for roadside assistance. As she waited on hold, her eyes drifted to the crafts on the table. The bracelets and keychains were charming, their colors vibrant and cheerful, and the attention to detail was impressive. "Did you make these?" Nicole asked, her tone softening. Emily nodded again, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "Yes, I sell them to help my family." Nicole raised an eyebrow. "Your family? How old are you?" 13, Emily said, her voice steady despite the weariness in her eyes. "My mom works a lot, so I help with what I can." Nicole studied the girl for a moment. There was a quiet dignity in her that struck a chord. Before she could respond, the phone buzzed in her hand. The roadside assistance operator explained that a tow truck would arrive, but it would take at least an hour. "Of course it will," Nicole muttered under her breath, handing the phone back to Emily. She glanced at the crafts again. "How much for one of these?" Emily perked up slightly, grateful for the interest. "The bracelets are $5 and the keychains are $3. Nicole pulled out her wallet, hesitating. For someone like her, the prices were laughably low, but she could see how much they meant to this girl. Without a word, she handed over a $20 bill and picked up a braided bracelet. Emily's eyes widened. "I don't have enough change for that," she stammered. "Keep it," Nicole said simply. "You deserve it." For a moment, Emily was too stunned to respond. She clutched the bill tightly, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief washing over her. "Thank you," she whispered. Nicole nodded, sitting down on a nearby rock to wait for the tow truck. She watched Emily quietly return to her crafts, her hands working diligently. The girl reminded her of herself at that age, not the circumstances, but the determination. Nicole had clawed her way to success through sheer grit and ambition, but somewhere along the way, she had lost sight of what truly mattered. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the highway, Nicole found herself reflecting on the choices that had brought her here. Emily's resilience was humbling, a stark contrast to the hollow victories of corporate life. When the tow truck finally arrived, Nicole stood to leave but paused. "Here," she said, handing Emily a business card. "If you ever want to do something more with these, give me a call. I might have some ideas." Emily took the card hesitantly, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Why?" Nicole smiled faintly. "Because you're talented, and because everyone deserves a chance." As the tow truck rumbled away, Emily stared at the card in her hand. For the first time in a long time, a flicker of hope sparked in her chest. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time Emily packed up her stand and began the short walk home. The card Nicole had handed her felt strangely heavy in her pocket, as though it carried more weight than its slim size suggested. She kept running her fingers over its edges, her thoughts racing. "Everyone deserves a chance," Nicole had said. The words lingered, stirring something deep inside Emily. For as long as she could remember, life had been a series of closed doors. The idea that someone might see potential in her or her work felt both thrilling and impossible. The gravel road crunched beneath her sneakers as she approached the trailer where her family lived. It sat at the edge of the woods, its exterior faded and patched with mismatched sheets of metal. The porch sagged, and the single window was taped together where the glass had cracked. Inside, Emily's mother, Lisa, was making dinner, a meager meal of rice and canned beans. The smell filled the cramped space as Molly, 8, and Sam, 6, played quietly on the floor with their one intact toy, a battered stuffed rabbit missing an ear. Emily stepped through the door, dropping her bag in the corner. "I made $20 today," she announced, holding up the bill. She tried to sound casual, but her voice carried an edge of excitement. Lisa turned from the stove, her face etched with exhaustion, but softening at the sight of her daughter. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We can use some of it to keep the lights on this month." Emily hesitated. She wanted to tell her mother about Nicole, about the strange and fleeting kindness that had stirred something in her, but she wasn't sure how to explain it without sounding foolish. Instead, she simply nodded. "I'll save the rest for more supplies." Later that night, as her siblings slept huddled together under a single blanket, Emily sat by the small table near the window, her hands busy weaving a new bracelet. The card lay in front of her, its pristine white surface a stark contrast to the cluttered tabletop. Her gaze lingered on the name, Nicole Bennett. Beneath it was a title she didn't entirely understand, Executive Director, Bennett and Hayes Enterprises. And then, in fine print, a phone number and an email address. Emily bit her lip. Would someone like Nicole really want to hear from someone like her? The thought made her chest tighten. She shook her head, slipping the card into a jar where she kept spare change and small mementos. It would stay there for now, out of sight, but not entirely out of mind. In the heart of the city, Nicole sat at her kitchen counter, a glass of wine in hand and her laptop open in front of her. The apartment was immaculate, filled with modern furniture and framed art that screamed success. Yet, as she scrolled through emails and upcoming deadlines, Nicole felt a strange hollowness. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the girl at the roadside stand. Emily's quiet determination had left an impression she couldn't shake. For all her wealth and accomplishments, Nicole couldn't recall the last time she'd felt the kind of pride Emily had shown when holding that $20 bill. Nicole sipped her wine, her fingers tapping the counter. She thought of the stack of reports waiting for her at the office and the endless stream of client calls. None of it felt as urgent as it had before. That realization unsettled her. Before she could talk herself out of it, Nicole opened her email and typed a quick message to a colleague in marketing. "I need some insight into small-scale artisan markets. How feasible is it to connect rural crafters with urban buyers? Let's discuss tomorrow." She hit send, her pulse quickening. It was a small step, but it felt significant. For the first time in years, Nicole felt like she was working towards something that mattered. The next morning, Emily woke early, her mind still swirling with thoughts of Nicole's visit. After helping her mother get Molly and Sam ready for school, she packed her crafts and returned to her stand. The day passed in its usual rhythm, cars speeding by, the occasional kind driver stopping to browse or chat. Emily was focused on stringing a new batch of beads when a familiar black car pulled over. Her heart skipped. Nicole stepped out, her polished heels crunching on the gravel. "Hi again," Nicole said, a faint smile on her face. Emily stood, surprised. "You're back." "I am." Nicole gestured to the crafts on the table. "You have more things today. They're beautiful." Emily felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you." Nicole picked up one of the bracelets, turning it over in her hands. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. How you do this to help your family." Emily nodded, unsure where this was going. Nicole set the bracelet down and met Emily's eyes. What if there was a way to sell these somewhere bigger? Somewhere with more people? Emily's brows furrowed. "Like in a store? Or online?" Nicole said. "There are a lot of people who would appreciate this kind of handmade work. I know some people who could help get it started." Emily blinked, her hands stilling. The idea sounded far too grand, far too distant from her reality. "Why would they help me?" she asked cautiously. Nicole tilted her head. "Because everyone starts somewhere. And because I think you have something special." Emily felt a strange flutter of hope, but quickly tamped it down. She had learned not to let herself get carried away by promises. "It sounds nice," she said quietly, "but I don't think I could afford something like that." Nicole nodded, as though she had expected the response. "Let me help," she said. "No strings attached. I want to see what's possible." Emily hesitated. It was one thing to accept a $20 bill. It was another to accept help that felt like charity. "I don't want to owe anyone," she said firmly. "You won't," Nicole assured her. "Think of it as an investment. If it works, you can pay it forward someday. Help someone else." The words sank in slowly, settling into a part of Emily she hadn't dared explore. She thought of her mother's tired face, her siblings' hopeful eyes. If there was even a chance this could make their lives better, could she really say no? Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll try. Nicole's smile widened. Good. Let's start small. I'll take some of these bracelets and show them to a few people I know. We'll go from there. As Nicole carefully selected a few items, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees, casting golden light over Emily's stand. For the first time in weeks, she found herself looking forward to the end of the day, not because she was exhausted, but because of what Nicole had promised. The sleek black car had left earlier, carrying a small selection of her handmade bracelets and keychains. Emily had watched it disappear down the dusty road, a strange mix of excitement and anxiety swirling in her chest. Her mother, Lisa, had been skeptical when Emily mentioned Nicole's offer. People don't just help out of the goodness of their hearts, sweetheart, she'd said, her voice tinged with weariness as she folded laundry late into the night. Emily wanted to believe Nicole was different. There was something genuine in the woman's demeanor, a sincerity that Emily couldn't ignore. Still, doubt crept in as the hours passed. What if Nicole didn't come back? What if her crafts weren't good enough? She shoved the thoughts aside and focused on her work, her fingers deftly threading beads on a string. Meanwhile, in the bustling heart of the city, Nicole Bennett sat in her glass-walled office, the bracelets from Emily's stand laid out carefully on her desk. Across from her, a colleague from the marketing department, Sarah, examined them with interest. "These are charming," Sarah said, holding one up to the light. "Very rustic, very trendy. There's definitely a market for this kind of thing." Nicole leaned forward. "Do you think it's worth pitching to the charity board? They've been looking for unique handmade items to feature at their annual fundraiser." Sarah nodded. "Absolutely. This kind of story, local artisans, grassroots efforts, it resonates with people. We could position it as supporting small businesses, which always plays well." Nicole's lips curved into a slight smile. "That's what I was thinking. Let's propose it and see where it goes." A week later, Emily was back at her stand, arranging her crafts in neat rows, when she spotted Nicole's car pulling up. She stood quickly, her heart racing. Nicole stepped out, carrying a small box, her expression unreadable. "Hi, Emily," Nicole said warmly. "Do you have a minute?" Emily nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Of course." Nicole set the box on the table and opened it, revealing a crisp white card on top of neatly arranged bracelets. The card bore the logo of an elegant charity event. Emily read the words aloud, stumbling slightly. "Annual fundraiser auction, benefiting community development programs." "I spoke to the organizers," Nicole said, her tone casual but her eyes sparkling. "They loved your work. These bracelets will be part of their silent auction next month." Emily stared, uncomprehending. "They want to sell my bracelets? At a fancy event?" Nicole laughed softly. "Not just sell. They're going to highlight your story. People love knowing the person behind the product. It gives everything more meaning." Emily's mouth opened and closed as she struggled to process the information. "But what if no one buys them?" she whispered, her insecurities bubbling to the surface. Nicole's smile didn't waver. "They will. And even if they don't, this is just the beginning. It's about getting your name out there, showing people what you can do." For a moment, Emily didn't know what to say. She glanced at the bracelet she'd worked so hard on, now carefully packed and presented in a way she'd never imagined. It was overwhelming, but it was also exhilarating. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Nicole reached across the table, her hand light on Emily's shoulder. "You earned this, Emily. I'm just helping you share it with the world." As the weeks passed, Emily found herself busier than ever. Nicole's faith in her crafts lit a fire inside her. She spent late nights creating new designs, experimenting with colors and patterns, and pushing herself to do better. The upcoming auction became a beacon of hope, a chance to prove to herself and everyone else that her work mattered. Her siblings, Molly and Sam, watched her work with wide-eyed curiosity. One evening, as Emily twisted strands of thread into a bracelet, Molly piped up. "Can I help?" Emily paused, surprised. "You wanna?" Molly nodded earnestly. "You're always working so hard. I want to help you make something pretty." Touched, Emily handed her sister a small pile of beads and showed her how to string them. Sam quickly joined in, his little fingers fumbling but determined. For the first time in weeks, the trailer was filled with laughter and the soft clinking of beads. On the night of the auction, Nicole arrived at the venue dressed in a sleek navy gown. The room buzzed with energy as elegantly dressed guests perused the items on display. At the center of it all was a table showcasing Emily's bracelets, accompanied by a small plaque describing her story, Handcrafted Hope, a young artisan's journey to support her family. Nicole hovered nearby, watching as people stopped to admire the work. Many read the plaque, nodding thoughtfully. A few began bidding. She didn't realize how much she was holding her breath until the first piece sold. The bids climbed steadily, each bracelet fetching more than Nicole had expected. By the end of the night, the entire collection was gone. When Nicole called Emily the next day to tell her the news, Emily was stunned. "They sold all of them?" she asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. "They did," Nicole confirmed, smiling as she heard the joy in Emily's voice. "And they want to order more for the next event." Emily clutched the phone, her hands trembling. For so long, she'd been fighting just to get by, never daring to dream of something bigger. Now, thanks to a stranger's kindness, the possibilities seemed endless. "Thank you," she said again, but this time, the words felt inadequate. Nicole's voice softened. "You did this, Emily. I just gave you a push. Now it's your turn to decide how far you want to go." As Emily hung up, she looked around the tiny trailer at the faces of her mother and siblings and felt something shift. For the first time in her life, the weight of survival didn't feel so crushing. She had a chance to build something better, not just for herself, but for all of them. The morning sun streamed through the cracked window of the Carter family trailer, painting streaks of light across the small kitchen table. Emily sat with her siblings, Molly and Sam, stringing beads onto colorful threads. The air inside was filled with a rare buzz of excitement. Last night, Nicole had called again with news that still felt like a dream. The bracelets had been a hit at the auction, and more orders were already coming in. Emily held up a finished bracelet, admiring the neat pattern she had crafted. "What do you think?" she asked Molly, who sat beside her, her little fingers working clumsily with the beads. "It's pretty," Molly said, smiling up at her sister. "Do you think people really wear them?" Emily nodded, her confidence growing. "They do." Nicole said some people even asked if they could buy more at the event. Sam, who was focused intently on stringing blue and green beads, looked up. "Are we rich now?" The question made Emily laugh, a sound that startled even her. "Not rich, Sammy, but maybe things won't be as hard for a while." Lisa, their mother, entered the room just then, balancing a steaming mug of coffee in one hand and a laundry basket in the other. "Don't get ahead of yourselves," she said, her tone pragmatic but not unkind. "These things take time. You've done well, Emily, but let's not count on miracles." Emily nodded, understanding her mother's caution. They had been disappointed too many times before to take good fortune for granted. But deep down, she couldn't help feeling that this time was different. In the days that followed, Emily worked harder than ever. She spent hours perfecting her designs, often losing track of time as she focused on each bead and knot. Nicole visited regularly, always bringing encouraging updates or small suggestions to improve the designs. One afternoon, Nicole arrived with a visitor in tow. The woman, introduced as Sarah, was from Nicole's marketing department. She had a bright, friendly demeanor and carried a notebook filled with ideas. "Emily, we've been brainstorming ways to make your work more visible," Sarah began, her voice warm and enthusiastic. "We think we can set up a small online shop for you. It would let more people see your crafts and place orders directly." Emily blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "An online shop? Like a website?" "Exactly," Sarah said. "It's pretty simple to set up, and Nicole has offered to cover the initial costs." Emily turned to Nicole, her mouth opening in protest. "I can't let you do that. You've already done so much." Nicole held up a hand, her expression firm but kind. "Emily, think of it as an investment, not a handout. You'll pay it forward one day. For now, let us help you get started." Lisa, who had been quietly folding laundry nearby, spoke up. "Are you sure this isn't too much trouble? We don't want to take advantage." Nicole smiled. It's no trouble at all. I wouldn't offer if I didn't believe in Emily and her work. Emily glanced at her mother, who gave a small, reluctant nod. Finally, she turned back to Nicole and Sarah. Okay, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. Let's do it. Setting up the shop was a whirlwind experience. Nicole and Sarah guided Emily through the process, explaining how to take clear photos of her crafts and write descriptions that highlighted their handmade charm. Emily felt overwhelmed at times, but she soaked up every bit of knowledge, eager to learn. The first batch of items went live on the website within a week. Nicole helped promote it through her network, and soon, the orders began to trickle in. At first, it was just a few bracelets here and there, but as word spread, the numbers grew. Emily's siblings became her unofficial helpers, turning their shared work table into a hive of activity. Molly took charge of sorting beads by color, while Sam handled packaging, proudly sealing each envelope with a sticker that read, "Handcrafted with love by Emily Carter." Despite the growing success, challenges persisted. One day, as Emily sat surrounded by half-finished bracelets and piles of orders, she felt the weight of it all pressing down on her. Her hands ached, her back was sore, and she worried constantly about meeting deadlines. Lisa noticed her daughter's fatigue and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're doing so much, Emily. Don't forget to take a break now and then." Emily sighed, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I can't slow down, Mom. What if I fall behind? What if people stop buying?" Lisa crouched beside her, looking into her eyes. "You've already come so far. Even if things slow down, you'll find a way. You always do." Emily nodded, her mother's words offering a small but much-needed comfort. That evening, a small but unexpected kindness reminded Emily why she had started this journey. As she was finishing a batch of bracelets, a knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, she found Mrs. Jenkins, their elderly neighbor, holding a small box of cookies. "I heard about what you're doing," Mrs. Jenkins said, her voice soft but warm. "You've always been such a good girl, Emily. I wanted to bring these over to say I'm proud of you." Emily's throat tightened with emotion as she accepted the box. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. That means a lot." "It's no trouble," the woman said, patting Emily's hand. "You remind me so much of my daughter when she was your age, always working hard, always thinking of others." As Mrs. Jenkins shuffled away, Emily stood in the doorway, the cookies in her hands and tears prickling her eyes. In that moment, she realized that the small gestures of kindness she had received from Nicole, from Mrs. Jenkins, and even from her siblings were what kept her going. They were proof that she wasn't alone in this. Later that night, as Emily sat with her family, she opened the cookie box and placed it in the center of the table. Molly and Sam dove in eagerly, their laughter filling the room. Emily smiled, her heart full despite her exhaustion. For the first time in years, she felt like they were moving towards something brighter. And she vowed to keep working not just for herself, but for everyone who had believed in her along the way. The air was crisp the following morning as Emily stood by her roadside stand. It had been a part of her life for so long that she almost felt guilty leaving it behind, even if the online shop was growing into something bigger than she ever imagined. The stand had been her starting point, a place where every bracelet and trinket carried a piece of her story. Now, with the orders coming in steadily through the website, she had fewer reasons to set up here. Still, the stand was comforting, a reminder of her roots. She smiled softly as a car slowed to a stop in front of her, the driver rolling down their window to glance at her display. "How much for the keychains?" the woman asked, her voice friendly. $3 each, Emily replied, lifting one of her favorites, a brightly colored piece strung with glass beads. The woman handed over a $10 bill and waved away the change. "Keep the rest. These are lovely." "Thank you," Emily said, her gratitude genuine. Even now, small acts of generosity like this continued to surprise her. Later that day, Nicole arrived with exciting news. She parked her sleek black car by the trailer, stepping out with a stack of papers in her hands. Her face was lit with energy, the kind of enthusiasm Emily had come to associate with Nicole's big ideas. "I have something for you," Nicole said as she joined Emily at the kitchen table, where the young girl was working on a new batch of bracelets. Molly and Sam, seated nearby with their coloring books, glanced up curiously. Emily wiped her hands on her jeans. "What's that?" she asked, eyeing the papers. Nicole spread them out on the table. "It's a proposal for a pop-up market downtown. I spoke with some people I know, and they're hosting an event next month featuring small businesses and artisans. Your shop has been invited." Emily froze, her hands hovering above the table. "A market? In the city?" Nicole nodded, her smile encouraging. "Yes, it's a great way to meet customers face-to-face and show them your work. You'll have your own booth, and I'll help you set it up." Emily's heart raced. The idea of going to the city, of presenting her work in front of so many people, was both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "What if it doesn't go well? What if no one likes what I bring?" Nicole reached across the table, her voice steady. "Emily, you've already proven that people love your work. This is just another step forward. You don't have to decide right now, but I think you should consider it." Emily glanced at her mother, who had been quietly folding laundry in the corner. Lisa offered a small smile. "It's a big opportunity, sweetheart. If you're ready, you should go for it." Over the next few days, Emily mulled over the idea. She had always dreamed of something bigger, but the thought of stepping outside her comfort zone filled her with doubt. One evening, as the family sat together after dinner, Lisa gently nudged her. "You know, when I was your age, I wanted to be a teacher," she said, her voice reflective. "But life had other plans. If you have a chance to do something you love, Emily, take it." Emily thought about her mother's words long after everyone else had gone to bed. Sitting alone at the small kitchen table, she traced the patterns of the bracelets she'd made that day. Slowly, determination began to replace her fear. The morning of the pop-up market arrived quicker than Emily expected. Nicole had driven out early to help her transport the crafts and set up the booth. Molly and Sam begged to come along, but Lisa promised to bring them later in the day so they could see their sister's big moment. As they drove into the city, Emily stared out the window, her eyes wide as the countryside gave way to towering buildings and bustling streets. It was a world so different from the quiet one she knew, and it overwhelmed her. "Don't worry," Nicole said, sensing her anxiety. "You'll do great." They arrived at the venue, a vibrant outdoor plaza filled with rows of tents and booths. Artisans were busy arranging their goods, from handmade candles to painted ceramics. Emily's booth was tucked into a corner, but Nicole assured her it was a great spot. With Nicole's guidance, Emily arranged her bracelets and keychains on the display table. She added small signs with handwritten descriptions and a banner that read, "Handcrafted by Emily Carter." As the market opened, Emily's nerves returned. She sat behind the table, her hands fidgeting in her lap, unsure how to draw people in. But slowly, visitors began to stop and admire her work. A young woman picked up a bracelet, her face lighting up. "This is gorgeous. Did you make it?" Emily nodded shyly. "Yes, I did." The woman smiled. "I'll take two." Each small sale gave Emily a bit more confidence. By midday, the booth was buzzing with activity. People admired the vibrant colors and intricate patterns, often commenting on how unique each piece felt. Nicole stayed nearby, helping when needed but letting Emily take the lead. She watched with pride as the young girl found her rhythm, chatting with customers and sharing her story. As the afternoon wore on, Emily was surprised to see Lisa arriving with Molly and Sam in tow. Her siblings ran up to her, their faces bright with excitement. "Emily, look at all the people!" Molly exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. Sam pointed at the table. "Did you sell a lot?" Emily smiled, her heart swelling at their enthusiasm. "A few, maybe more than a few." Lisa stepped closer, her expression soft. "You're doing amazing, sweetheart." Hearing her mother's words felt like the final piece falling into place. For the first time, Emily truly believed she could succeed. By the end of the day, Emily's booth was nearly empty, her crafts sold to dozens of visitors. She packed up with Nicole's help, the weight of her success beginning to sink in. As they drove home, Nicole glanced over at Emily. "You did it," she said simply. Emily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I guess I did." But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The city had shown her what was possible, and she was ready to keep moving forward one bracelet at a time. The ride back from the pop-up market was filled with a quiet but palpable sense of accomplishment. The hum of the car engine seemed to match Emily's racing thoughts. As she gazed out the window, watching the city's skyscrapers give way to sprawling fields, she replayed the events of the day in her mind, the customers who smiled as they picked up her bracelets, the words of encouragement from complete strangers, and the pride on her mother's face. For the first time, Emily felt like the future wasn't a distant, unreachable thing. It was here, now, waiting for her to take hold of it. "You've got something special, Emily," Nicole said as they neared the Carter family's trailer. Her voice was warm but steady, as if stating an undeniable fact. "Today proved that. Now the question is, what do you want to do next?" Emily hesitated, the weight of the question pressing on her. "I don't know," she admitted. "This all feels so big already. Bigger than anything I ever thought I could do." Nicole smiled. "That's the thing about growing. It feels big at first, but you'll adjust. You're already doing it." That evening, after dinner, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her mother, Lisa. The house was quiet. Molly and Sam had already gone to bed. The table was cluttered with the remnants of the day: bracelets, scraps of thread, and a small jar of coins from her sales. Lisa sipped her tea, her gaze thoughtful. "You know, Emily, I wasn't sure about all this at first," she began. "But today, seeing you out there, seeing the way people responded to your work, I'm proud of you. I hope you know that." Emily looked down at her hands, her cheeks warming. "Thanks, Mom. She paused, searching for the right words. "I just want things to be better. For all of us." Lisa reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. "They already are, sweetheart. And it's because of you." The next day, Nicole called with an idea. "Emily, I was thinking about what's next. You've already shown what you can do with a pop-up market and the online shop, but what if we took it a step further?" "A step further?" Emily repeated, her voice curious. "Yes," Nicole said. "What if we turned this into something bigger, not just for you, but for others like you? I know there are so many talented people in your community who probably feel like they don't have a chance to show their work. What if you help create that chance?" Emily's brow furrowed as she considered the suggestion. "You mean like a group? For other crafters?" "Exactly," Nicole said, her tone enthusiastic. "You've already built a foundation with your work. Imagine what could happen if others joined in. It could be a collective, something that supports everyone." The idea sent a ripple of excitement through Emily, but it also felt daunting. "I wouldn't even know where to start," she admitted. "That's where I can help," Nicole said. "We'll take it one step at a time. But I think you're ready for this, Emily." Over the next few weeks, the idea began to take shape. With Nicole's guidance, Emily started reaching out to neighbors and friends in the community, asking if they'd be interested in joining a crafting collective. At first, the responses were hesitant. Most people were used to scraping by on their own, wary of promises that sounded too good to be true. But as word spread about Emily's success, more people began to show interest. Mrs. Jenkins, their elderly neighbor, offered to teach others how to knit. A teenage boy down the road, Jacob, revealed a talent for woodworking and agreed to craft small picture frames. Even Lisa found herself joining in, creating simple but beautiful embroidered napkins. The first meeting of the collective took place in the Carter family's small living room. The space was cramped with chairs and stools pulled from every corner of the house, but the atmosphere was warm and buzzing with energy. Nicole sat near the door, taking notes as Emily addressed the group. "I know this might seem scary," Emily said, her voice steady but her hands twisting nervously. "It's scary for me too, but if we work together, we can create something bigger than any of us could do alone." The room was quiet for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Then Mrs. Jenkins spoke up, her voice firm. "I think it's a wonderful idea. Count me in." One by one, the others nodded in agreement. By the end of the meeting, the collective was officially underway. Nicole wasted no time helping Emily organize the next steps. They worked together to secure a small grant from a local nonprofit, which provided materials and a temporary space to work a community hall just a few blocks away. The collective's first project was a collaboration, a series of gift baskets that included handmade crafts from everyone involved. Emily's bracelets were a central feature, paired with Mrs. Jenkins's knitted scarves, Jacob's wooden frames, and Lisa's embroidered napkins. The baskets would be sold at the next pop-up market, with the proceeds split among the group. As the collective grew, so did Emily's confidence. She found herself stepping into a leadership role, organizing meetings, delegating tasks, and encouraging others. It wasn't always easy. There were disagreements and setbacks, but with Nicole's mentorship, Emily learned how to navigate the challenges. The day of the market arrived, and the collective's booth was a vibrant display of creativity. The gift baskets were stacked neatly, their contents carefully arranged to showcase each crafter's work. A sign hung above the booth, reading, "Community crafted, handmade with heart." Customers flocked to the booth, drawn by the story behind the collective. Emily and the others took turns sharing their experiences, explaining how they had come together to create something meaningful. By the end of the day, every basket had sold. As they packed up, Emily looked around at the members of the collective, her neighbors, her friends, her family. They were laughing, talking, and planning their next project. Nicole approached, her smile bright. "This is just the beginning, Emily. You're building something amazing." Emily nodded, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." Nicole shook her head. "All I did was help plant the seed. You're the one making it grow." Emily glanced back at the booth, the sign swaying gently in the breeze. For the first time, she felt like the future wasn't just hers, it belonged to all of them. The days following the collective success at the market were a whirlwind of activity. Orders poured in from customers who had seen the baskets, and word about the group's mission spread quickly. Emily found herself busier than ever, juggling the collective's projects with her own growing responsibilities. The excitement was exhilarating, but it also left her feeling stretched thin. One evening, as Emily was finishing a batch of bracelets at the kitchen table, Nicole arrived with news that made her pause. Nicole carried a sleek folder tucked under her arm, her face glowing with excitement. "I've got something big for you," Nicole said, setting the folder down and flipping it open. Inside was a glossy invitation to an upcoming charity gala in the city. Emily leaned forward, her eyes scanning the text. The gala was for a prominent nonprofit organization that supported small businesses and artisans. Nicole tapped the page where Emily's name was printed. "They want the collective to showcase your work at the event," Nicole said, her voice brimming with pride. "It's not just a market this time. It's a chance to tell your story to people who can really make a difference." Emily's stomach flipped. "The collective? At a gala?" she repeated, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. Nicole nodded. "It's an incredible opportunity. These are people who love to support causes like yours. If they see what you're doing, who knows what doors could open?" Emily stared at the invitation, her thoughts racing. She felt a swell of pride at how far the collective had come, but doubt crept in almost immediately. "I don't know if we're ready for something like this," she admitted. "These are important people. What if we mess it up?" Nicole placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "You're readier than you think, and you won't be doing it alone. The collective will be there with you, and I'll help every step of the way." The following weeks were a flurry of preparation. Nicole helped Emily and the collective design a display for the event, highlighting their most popular items. Emily's bracelets, Mrs. Jenkins's scarves, Jacob's wooden frames, and Lisa's embroidered napkins. Each piece would be accompanied by a small card explaining its maker's story, emphasizing the community's collaborative spirit. The members of the collective worked tirelessly, meeting almost every day in the borrowed community hall. Despite the long hours, the atmosphere was one of shared excitement. For many of them, the gala felt like a chance to show the world what they were capable of. As the date approached, Nicole brought in Sarah, her colleague from the marketing department, to help Emily practice speaking about the collective. At first, Emily struggled to find the right words, her nerves getting the best of her. "What if I forget what to say?" Emily asked during one of their practice sessions. "Just speak from the heart," Sarah said gently. "Your story is powerful on its own. You don't need to memorize anything. Just tell them why you started this, and they'll listen." The night of the gala arrived, and Emily stood in front of the mirror in her mother's bedroom, smoothing down the simple dress Nicole had helped her pick out. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "You look beautiful," Lisa said from the doorway, her voice full of emotion. You're going to do great, Emily. Emily turned, her eyes meeting her mother's. What if they don't like what we've done? She asked, voicing the fear that had been sitting in her chest all week. Lisa stepped forward, placing her hands on Emily's shoulders. They're going to love it, she said firmly. Because it's real. It's you. The gala was held in an elegant ballroom in the heart of the city. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the crowd of attendees, who mingled in clusters, sipping champagne and exchanging polite conversation. Emily's booth was set up near the entrance, its display carefully arranged to showcase the collective's work. Emily stood behind the table with Nicole and several members of the collective, her heart pounding as the first guests approached. She greeted them with a nervous smile, answering their questions as best she could. Slowly, her confidence grew. The moment that defined the night came when one of the event's organizers introduced Emily to a man in a tailored suit. He was a representative from a foundation that supported small business initiatives, and he had heard about the collective story. I'm impressed by what you've accomplished, he said, his tone warm and genuine. It's not easy to bring people together the way you have. Emily blushed, her hands fidgeting at her sides. It hasn't been easy, she admitted, but it's worth it. Everyone here deserves a chance to show what they can do. The man nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to help, he said. Our foundation offers grants for initiatives like yours. If you're interested, we can discuss how to apply. Emily's breath caught. A grant? That could really help us expand. Exactly, he said with a smile. You're doing something special, Emily. We'd love to be a part of it. By the end of the night, Emily felt like she was floating. The collective had not only made sales, but had also connected with people who believed in their mission. As the ballroom began to empty, Emily stood by the display, looking at the nearly empty table. Nicole approached, her smile wide. How do you feel? Proud, Emily said after a moment, her voice steady. And hopeful. Nicole nodded. Good. Because this is just the beginning. You've planted the seeds, Emily. Now it's time to watch them grow. Emily looked around the room, her heart swelling with gratitude for Nicole, for the collective, and for the journey that had brought them here. She thought about the small roadside stand where it had all started and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, she didn't just hope for a brighter future. She could see it taking shape. The morning after the gala, Emily awoke to sunlight streaming through the trailer's small window. The events of the previous night felt almost like a dream. She lay still for a moment, replaying the conversations, the applause, and the promise of a potential grant. It was more than she had ever dared hope for. As she got up and went to the kitchen, she found her mother sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. Lisa looked up, her face glowing with pride. You were incredible last night, she said, her voice full of warmth. Emily smiled shyly, sitting down across from her. It still doesn't feel real. All those people cared about what we're doing. They wanted to help. That's because you're making something worth caring about, Lisa said. You've worked so hard, and people can see that. Emily nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. The representative from the foundation had given her hope that the collective could grow into something truly lasting. But the work ahead seemed daunting. Expanding meant more responsibilities, more coordination, and more challenges. Could she handle it? Later that day, Nicole called with a new idea. Emily, I've been thinking, she began, her tone brisk but excited. The gala was a huge success, but we can't stop there. If you want the collective to grow, you'll need to build more connections. Connections? Emily asked, uncertain. Yes. The grant would be a great start, but you'll also need partnerships, businesses, other nonprofits, anyone who can help support what you're building. I want to help you meet those people. Emily hesitated. She'd always been nervous about stepping into unfamiliar spaces, especially ones where she didn't feel like she belonged. Do you really think I can do that? She asked. Nicole's voice softened. Emily, you've already done it. You stood in front of a room full of strangers last night and told your story. This is just the next step. In the weeks that followed, Nicole arranged several meetings with potential partners. The first was with a local businesswoman named Marissa, who ran a popular boutique specializing in handmade goods. Marissa had heard about the collective through the gala and was eager to collaborate. I'd love to feature some of your work in my shop, Marissa said as she examined one of Emily's bracelets during their meeting. These are exactly the kind of items my customers look for: unique, personal, and full of character. Emily's nerves melted away as she spoke about the collective's mission. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed to a small trial. Marissa would stock a selection of items from the collective, and they'd split the profits. That went well, Nicole said as they left the boutique. See? You're a natural. Emily smiled, feeling a small surge of confidence. It's starting to feel like maybe this can work. The next meeting was with the representative from the foundation, who wanted to discuss the grant application process. Nicole joined Emily for support, but she encouraged Emily to take the lead. As they sat in the foundation's office, the representative, a kind-faced woman named Dana, explained the details. The grant is designed to help community initiatives like yours grow sustainably, she said. We'll need a detailed plan for how you'll use the fund's materials, outreach, training, that sort of thing. Emily nodded, taking notes as Dana spoke. She felt a mix of excitement and intimidation. The thought of putting together a formal proposal seemed overwhelming, but she reminded herself of the collective's potential. They had already accomplished so much with so little. What could they do with real resources? I'll get started on the plan right away, Emily said, her voice steady despite her nerves. Back at the community hall, Emily shared the news with the collective. The room buzzed with energy as members discussed ideas for the grant proposal. Jacob suggested purchasing better tools for his woodworking, while Mrs. Jenkins proposed hosting knitting workshops for younger members of the community. Lisa, who had grown more involved in the collective's activities, offered a practical perspective. We should also think about things like storage and transportation, she said. If we're producing more, we'll need a way to keep everything organized and get it where it needs to go. Emily listened intently, jotting down everyone's suggestions. She felt a growing sense of responsibility not just for her own success, but for the collective's future. It was no longer just about her bracelets. It was about creating something that could uplift the entire community. As the weeks went on, Emily began to see the power of collaboration. Marissa's boutique became a reliable outlet for the collective's work, and the orders from her shop provided a steady stream of income for the group. The collective also started hosting small events at the community hall, inviting local residents to learn about their mission and participate in crafting workshops. One of the most memorable moments came when a group of teenagers from the nearby high school visited the hall. Emily had been nervous about leading the workshop, but as she demonstrated how to make a simple bracelet, she noticed how engaged the teens became. They asked questions, shared stories, and even began brainstorming their own designs. "You're really good at this," one of the teens said, looking up from his bracelet. "Have you thought about teaching more classes?" The comment stayed with Emily long after the workshop ended. She realized that the collective wasn't just about making crafts, it was about building skills, fostering creativity, and bringing people together. One evening, as Emily and Nicole reviewed the draft of the grant proposal, Nicole paused, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Emily, you've come a long way," she said. "When I met you at that roadside stand, I saw someone with talent and determination. But now, I see a leader." Emily looked up, surprised. "A leader? I don't know about that." Nicole smiled. "A leader isn't someone who has all the answers. It's someone who inspires others to move forward together. That's exactly what you're doing." Emily considered Nicole's words, a warm sense of pride blooming in her chest. She thought about the collective, the friendships she had built, and the lives they were beginning to impact. Maybe Nicole was right. Maybe she was a leader. As the collective prepared to submit the grant application, Emily felt a mix of anticipation and hope. They had planted the seeds, and now it was time to see if they would grow. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. They had already built something extraordinary. And this was just the beginning. The collective buzzed with nervous energy in the weeks following the submission of their grant application. Emily had worked tirelessly with Nicole and the other members to ensure their proposal was as strong as possible. Now, all they could do was wait. The anticipation was heavy, but so was the resolve to keep moving forward regardless of the outcome. At the community hall, Emily found herself busier than ever. The collaboration with Marissa's boutique was thriving, with new orders coming in weekly. The hall had transformed from a quiet meeting space into a bustling hub of activity. Craftspeople worked side by side, sharing ideas and skills, while curious visitors often stopped by to see what the collective was creating. One afternoon, Emily sat at the hall's long folding table, threading beads for a new bracelet design. Across from her, Jacob sanded the edges of a wooden frame, his movements careful and deliberate. Nearby, Mrs. Jenkins and Lisa worked on a stack of knitted scarves and embroidered napkins for an upcoming event. "You've turned this place into something special," Mrs. Jenkins said, glancing up from her work. "It feels like the heart of the community now." Emily smiled, though the weight of her responsibilities was starting to take its toll. "It's not just me," she said, shaking her head. "Everyone here made it happen." Mrs. Jenkins gave her a knowing look. "Maybe, but it started with you." Despite the collective's progress, challenges began to creep in. The growing demand for their products meant longer hours and tighter deadlines. Some members struggled to keep up, and tensions occasionally flared. During one particularly hectic week, Jacob approached Emily with frustration written all over his face. "Emily, I'm falling behind on these frames," he said, holding up a partially finished piece. "I can't do this much on my own." Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to help but felt stretched too thin. "I know it's a lot," she said gently. "Let's talk to the group and figure out how we can support you. Maybe we can find someone to share the workload." Jacob sighed, but nodded, his expression softening. "Thanks. I just don't want to let anyone down." "You're not," Emily assured him. "We'll figure it out together." The strain wasn't limited to the collective. At home, Emily noticed her mother looking more exhausted than usual. Lisa had been juggling her cleaning job with her work for the collective, and the long days were beginning to wear on her. One evening, as Lisa folded laundry in the living room, Emily sat beside her. "Mom, you don't have to do everything," Emily said quietly. "I can take on more if you need a break." Lisa gave her a tired smile. "You're already doing so much, Emily. But I'll be okay. I'm just proud of what you've built. It's worth a little extra effort." Emily nodded, though her heart ached to see her mother so worn down. She promised herself she'd find a way to ease the burden for everyone. Amid the challenges, a moment of unexpected kindness reminded Emily why she had started this journey. One afternoon, as she worked at the community hall, a woman she didn't recognize walked in holding a small envelope. She introduced herself as Karen, a local teacher who had heard about the collective's work. "I don't have much to offer," Karen said, her voice soft, "but I wanted to contribute something. This is for my students that wanted to support what you're doing." Emily opened the envelope to find a collection of handwritten notes and small bills. Each note was filled with kind words of encouragement, written in the careful handwriting of children. One message read, "Thank you for helping people. You're an inspiration." Emily felt tears sting her eyes as she read the messages. She looked up at Karen, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. This means more than you know." Karen smiled. "You're making a difference, Emily. Keep going." The kindness renewed Emily's determination, but the challenges didn't let up. As the collective prepared for another pop-up market, they faced a major setback. A shipment of materials for Jacob's wooden frames was delayed, leaving him unable to complete his pieces in time. Without the frames, the gift baskets they had planned to sell felt incomplete. Emily gathered the group at the hall to brainstorm solutions. "We'll have to adjust," she said, her tone firm but calm. "We can't include the frames this time, but we'll focus on what we do have. The scarves, napkins, and bracelets are strong on their own." The members nodded, though the disappointment was evident. "We'll make it work," Mrs. Jenkins said, her voice steady. "We always do." Despite the setback, the market was a success. Customers admired the collective's resilience and purchased nearly every item. Emily felt a swell of pride as she watched her community come together to overcome the obstacle. When they returned to the hall that evening, the group celebrated their hard work. Laughter and conversation filled the space, and for a moment, the challenges of the past weeks felt distant. Nicole joined them, her smile wide as she approached Emily. "You've done it again," she said. "Every time something goes wrong, you find a way to turn it around." Emily shrugged, though her cheeks flushed with pride. "It's not just me. Everyone here makes it possible." A few days later, the long-awaited news about the grant arrived. Emily was at the community hall when her phone buzzed with an email notification. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the words. "Congratulations. Your application has been approved." Emily's breath caught, and a wide grin spread across her face. She stood abruptly, holding up the phone. "We got it," she shouted, her voice ringing through the hall. The collective erupted into cheers, their excitement echoing off the walls. Members hugged each other, their faces alight with joy and relief. Nicole, who had just arrived, pulled Emily into a quick embrace. "I told you this would happen," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You've earned every bit of this." That night, as Emily sat alone in the quiet of her room, she reflected on the journey so far. The challenges, the triumphs, the moments of doubt and determination it had all led to this. The grant wasn't just a financial boost. It was a validation of everything the collective had worked for. As she gazed out the window at the moonlit fields, Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come so far, and yet she knew this was only the beginning. With the grant, the collective could expand its reach, bringing hope and opportunity to even more people. "We're just getting started," Emily whispered to herself, her voice steady with resolve. The following weeks after the grant approval were a blur of activity. The collective wasted no time putting their plans into motion, transforming the community hall into a more efficient and welcoming space. With the funds, they purchased new tools for Jacob's Woodworking, an industrial sewing machine for Lisa and Mrs. Jenkins, and storage shelves to organize materials. The hall now buzzed with the sounds of progress. The hum of the sewing machine, the rhythmic tapping of hammers, and the cheerful chatter of members exchanging ideas. Emily stood in the middle of it all, her heart swelling with pride. This wasn't just a project anymore, it was a community in every sense of the word. One morning, Nicole arrived with more exciting news. She strode into the hall holding a sleek folder, her usual energy radiating from her smile. "Emily," Nicole said, drawing the girl aside, "I've been talking to some people about what you're doing here, and there's an organization that wants to feature the collective in their upcoming documentary." Emily's eyes widened. "A documentary? About us?" Nicole nodded. "It's part of a series on grassroots initiatives. They want to showcase how you've brought people together to create something meaningful. It could bring even more attention to the collective." Emily's first reaction was excitement, but doubt quickly followed. "Do you think we're ready for something like that?" she asked, her voice uncertain. Nicole placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've been ready, Emily. You've already shown the world what you can do. This is just another way to share your story." Emily took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The documentary crew arrived a few weeks later, their cameras and equipment sparking curiosity among the members. The producers spent several days filming at the hall, capturing the vibrant activity and interviewing members about their experiences. One of the crew members, a young woman named Clara, spent a lot of time with Emily, asking about her journey. "What inspired you to start all of this?" Clara asked one afternoon as they sat on the steps outside the hall. Emily thought for a moment, her gaze drifting toward the field where Molly and Sam were playing. "At first, it was just about survival," she admitted. "I wanted to help my family, to make things a little easier. But when I met Nicole and saw what was possible, it became more than that. I realized we could create something bigger, something that could help everyone here." Clara smiled. "It's amazing what you've built. Do you ever think about where it could go from here?" Emily hesitated, her mind spinning with possibilities. "Sometimes. But for now, I just want to keep growing it step by step." The release of the documentary brought a wave of attention to the collective. Orders for their crafts surged, and donations poured in from people moved by their story. The recognition was overwhelming but exhilarating. Marissa's boutique expanded its partnership with the collective, dedicating an entire section of the shop to their products. Other businesses reached out, eager to collaborate. Emily found herself juggling new opportunities while striving to maintain the collective's sense of community. One of the most significant moments came when the collective received an invitation to speak at a regional conference for small businesses. The event was attended by entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and policymakers, all eager to learn from grassroots success stories. Emily was chosen to represent the collective, a decision that both thrilled and terrified her. She spent days preparing her speech, practicing in front of Nicole, her family, and the members of the collective. "You've got this," Nicole told her on the morning of the conference. "Just remember why you started and speak from the heart." Standing on the stage in front of hundreds of people, Emily felt her nerves threatening to take over. But as she began to speak, she found her voice steadying. She told the story of the roadside stand, of Nicole's unexpected kindness, and of the collective's journey from a small group of crafters to a thriving community initiative. "I've learned that change doesn't have to start with something big," Emily said, her voice clear and confident. "It can start with a single act of kindness. It can start with people coming together and believing in each other. That's what we've done, and it's something anyone can do." The audience erupted into applause, and Emily felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. She had shared their story, and it had resonated. Back at the hall, the collective celebrated the conference success with a potluck dinner. Members brought homemade dishes, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and gratitude. Molly and Sam ran around with other children, their laughter echoing through the space. Nicole pulled Emily aside as the sun set, the two of them standing by the open door and watching the vibrant scene inside. "You've built something incredible here," Nicole said, her voice soft but full of admiration. "And it's only going to keep growing." Emily smiled, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." Nicole shook her head. "You've done more than you realize. And you've taught me something important, too." "Me? Taught you?" Emily asked, her tone surprised. Nicole nodded. "You've reminded me of what really matters. It's not about the big deals or the numbers. It's about people, about connection. I needed to see that." As the evening wound down, Emily stood in the center of the hall, looking around at the people who had become her extended family. The space, once quiet and unassuming, now pulsed with life, energy, and hope. Lisa approached, wrapping an arm around Emily's shoulders. "You've done something amazing, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your dad would be so proud." Emily blinked back tears, nodding. "I just want to keep going. There's so much more we can do." Lisa smiled. "And you will." As the moon rose high in the sky, Emily stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The journey had been long and full of challenges, but it had also been filled with unexpected kindness, determination, and growth. She thought of her siblings, her mother, the collective, and Nicole, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The future stretched out before her, full of possibility. And for the first time, Emily didn't just hope for something better, she knew it was within reach. "We've only just begun," she whispered to herself, her voice steady and sure. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that it was true. As the story of Emily and her community ends, we're reminded of the incredible power of resilience, kindness, and working together to create a better future. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming and motivational tales that highlight the strength of the human spirit. Don't forget to like, share, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story. Together, we can spread positivity and encourage change one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the smallest act of kindness can spark a transformation.